Hello and welcome to the How Not to Screw Up Your Kids podcast, the bucket emptying episodes. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Han, psychologist and parenting expert. So pour yourself a cuppa, find a comfy seat and enjoy the conversation. Today's episode is specifically for, the timing of this episode is specifically for all of you parents who have got children expecting or who have received results that may be disappointing. However, the episode and what I will cover is relevant for all parents with children who are getting disappointing results, whether that's disappointing academic results or that's disappointing results around friendships or an assignment or anything. So I think for those of you specifically with children who've got these sort of life critical or what appears to be life critical results, I want to just speak very specifically to you at the moment, and then I'm going to generalize more. Obviously, when our children are at school and they are receiving results about their next stage of progression, and particularly because school is this microcosm of the only benchmark that they have is that particular exam, set of exams or specific results, it can be really easy to find yourself overplaying the importance of those results at that time. And I'm genuinely not trying to trivialize in any way or any shape or form academia and academic results in themselves. But we know, because of all of the research evidence, that success comes in multiple different forms, and there isn't a cookie cutter in terms of all successful people follow exactly the same trajectory, and that trajectory is always in the academic arena. So the first thing I would say is really provide yourself that opportunity to get a bit of perspective on the disappointing situation, the disappointing set of results that you may or your child may have at that time. And the only way to do that is to take that step back. It's so important that we don't go into knee-jerk reactions, knee-jerk comments, knee-jerk next steps, but really allow that result, whatever that might be, to sink in, to truly understand and to be there as an empathetic support and listening ear to that result, first of all, really is not a great place to start acting from in terms of making some knee-jerk sort of decisions in that way. What I will say is if you are a parent of a child where the results are very specific to a next entry of a school or a university where there is an expectation to make a decision about the next steps, it's where you are able to, I do genuinely think being able to take that step back, that breather, that widening the lens so that you can see more of the landscape is really helpful. I understand for some that this may not be possible, particularly when we're talking about university and there's a definitive decision to go to university. But what I would say is, because I know that when there's a definitive decision, then there's the whole process of clearing within the UK. But I also think that opportunity to pause and to reflect can also be really powerful, because it may well be that pause and reflect allows your child to get off the treadmill that says that they need to do university as the next step, or that they need to go this year as the next step, or they need to do that course as the next step. I really believe that when these things happen, when we get disappointing results, when we don't get an outcome we were anticipating or hoping for, then rather than focusing in on the disappointment of it, and I know that this is hard and it sounds incredibly cliched, but actually looking at what the opportunity is that's being afforded to your child by that disappointing result. Is this actually an opportunity to sit back and think, have I just got caught in the treadmill? Is that what I want to do next? Is that the right logical next step for me or not? So I think that's the first thing I would say is if you've got that opportunity to take that step back. Now, you may well be listening to this and actually it's not about a specific result, but actually maybe about an interaction that your child has had with a friendship group. Maybe something has happened within a friendship group. Maybe there's been a sleepover. Maybe there's been a selection process. Maybe there's been a sort of dwindling down of a friendship group. Maybe there's been pairings off. and the disappointing outcome has got nothing to do with academic results, but much more in terms of their belief around themselves, their social world. And the same holds true. Rather than have a knee-jerk response to X did Y and then responding to it straight away, it's so much better to take that moment to pause, to reflect, to step back, to widen the lens, to look at the whole scenario before making a decision. We're emotional beings as humans, our children and us as adults. And when we think and when we act from those emotions, when we've not given ourselves that real opportunity to understand, to reflect, to consider, often means that we don't necessarily make the right choice for ourselves in that moment. So I think that pause piece is a really important bit. That's part of that reflection piece before we then take the next step. The other thing that we also need to do is to look at it within a wider context and really reframe that perspective and that expectation. And this is not to trivialize what's happened, but is simply to look at it in a broader picture. As I said before, school in that moment, if it's an academic thing, if it's a social thing, is our children's world. And it is the only aspect of their world that that they're being measured on at that time. But what we're trying to do as parents is we're looking at raising the adult at the end of the line. We're reverse engineering that process. And so we have to ask ourselves in those moments, what's the best thing that I can do right now? What's the best next step for my child in this moment on that basis of helping them become the adult that we want them to become in the end? So sometimes that means it's not for us to wade in and fix, but actually an opportunity to ask our child what they might want us to do to help. How might the next step look like? And it's not the long steps, the end step, but it's like, in this moment, what's the best next step that we can take? What should we be looking at doing? How can we best support our child in that, on that basis, so that they can then feel empowered to make those decisions? And the final thing that I would say, it's about really tune into what might be showing up for you. So it may well be that your child has had some really disappointing news, whether that's academic, whether that's to do with a friendship, whether that's to do with a selection. Just sit with your feelings for a moment. What's showing up for you? Why might you be feeling that way? Are you feeling that way directly because of what is being presented to you right now in front of you for your child? Or could there possibly be a reaction that is happening that is something coming up from the past? So it may well be, academically, you didn't excel at school and you wanted all that to be different for your children. Maybe you've invested in some way in terms of their academic capabilities, whether that's extra tutoring, whether that's private schools, whatever it might be. And actually, the disappointing result that has happened is not just about your child's disappointing results, but in some ways brings back that disappointing 18-year-old, 16-year-old for you. And what you're getting in terms of your own response is not just about what's happening for your child in that moment, but has a lot of weight that comes to it also from your own childhood. And I don't say that because I'm saying that makes it any less, or that you're wrong in some way, or that you're to blame, or as a parent, you're at fault. Of course you're not. We're human beings. This is the way that we operate. But it's really important that we understand that in the same ways we want our children to reflect and to take that moment and to maybe not necessarily see it as a down, see it as a negative, but instead actually see it as an opportunity to reflect on whether that is the right decision for them next. But it's also an opportunity for us to really challenge ourselves on, are my feelings related to this thing that is happening for my child, or are my feelings complicated by a whole host of other things that come from my own childhood And if that is the case, then we need to unravel that so that we can best support what is right for our child, not our inner child that we are inadvertently trying to fix through our child. Lots of child comments there, but hopefully that makes sense. But it's because it's such an important piece as a human. The way that we present ourselves, what we say, our belief systems, the way that we conduct ourselves is so much based not only on what's presented to us, but all of the history that comes with it. So I hope that you find that helpful. As ever, if you have loved this podcast episode, I would be eternally grateful if you could rate, follow, and review this podcast so that others can find us and we can spread the love. So until next time.